Action Committee. Normally, we would have our chairperson, Cynette Cavaliere, do the intros, but she is out today. So I am Sarah Waterman, and I am the town sustainability engineer and the staff liaison for the engineering department. We will still follow our regular routine of introducing ourselves, and I will start with John to my left.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everybody. John Getz. I am the town board liaison for this committee.
Rygg, committee member.
Pat Schichler, committee member.
Cheremeteff, committee member.
Katie Rygg, committee member.
Kenneth Crine, committee member.
Matt Prinzing, planning staff liaison.
And I will also note that John Bennett is absent today. So we'll move forward into the review and approval of minutes. Is there a motion that anyone would like to make?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Is there any discussion? Oh, is there a second? Sorry.
I'll second.
And is there any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, Matt, you can take the roll call.
Green,
Aye.
Schichler,
Aye.
Cheremeteff,
Aye.
Rygg,
Aye.
Crine.
Aye.
Thank you. And then we'll move forward into standing report for Monroe County Environmental Management Council. With Cynette missing the last meeting, we were thankfully lucky to have Pat attend. So would you like to share anything, and then we can mention the minutes?
Okay, the minutes are not in yet, I understand from...
Sorry, Pat, you attended the April meeting, right?
I attended the April meeting.
Okay, so we do have the minutes for the March meeting.
Oh, okay.
Which I can share on that.
Oh, okay.
So the March meeting featured the RIT capstone presentation, which this is all added into the Google Drive, so you guys can look at the minutes, but also the presentation that was given on green infrastructure. It highlighted a lot of the green infrastructure topics, or the green infrastructure initiatives at the Rochester Museum Science Center. One of the infrastructure items that they discussed was FlexiPave, this permeable pavement that they have. Remains highly effective for stormwater infiltration. Other permeable surfaces and green roofs require consistent maintenance to manage nutrient runoff and performance variability. And so, yes, we can, or you can review the presentation at your leisure, go through it. It looks like, yeah, pretty lengthy presentation altogether, but maybe if this is something that we'd want to have or invite the group to come and present to EECC, or if we can have some sort of, if there is a video of the presentation, maybe have it on the EECC website just to kind of highlight some of the green infrastructure options out there and considerations when looking at green infrastructure. The meeting also covered Monroe County's progress on sustainability and greenhouse gas planning, and then other New York State grant opportunities for Great Lakes restoration and agricultural conservation. And then, Pat, yes, you attended the April meeting, but maybe at the next meeting when we have the minutes, we'll discuss that.
Yes, and that indicated that to me.
Right.
We usually discuss it.
Yeah, we're usually
I did take
like
quite
a
a few
month
notes. I
behind.
will say
Okay.
I was very pleased, found it very interesting,
Nice.
and would be happy to go again.
Great. All right. Then moving on to town development projects, I'll pull up our GIS viewer here. We have news on the 1320 Harris Road to Roller subdivision.
Okay.
This was the application that EECC reviewed last year in regards to the impacts to the wetland EPOD. I'm just going to pull up that boundary here.
And that was an application for a single-family home and subdivision.
Yes. And so the planning board had essentially completed their review. They were just waiting on verification from the New York State DEC on the applicant's wetland delineation. And so the planning board with discussions with the town attorney, decided that they would be able to issue a conditional approval for the application, and there's very strict or very clear language in the approval resolution stating that if the New York State DEC, alters the wetland delineation or doesn't verify the wetland delineation, and the applicant either needs to get a wetland permit, or if they need to shift the home or shift the proposed lot lines, then they need to come back to the planning board for further review.
That might
So-
not happen now, because you heard about the regulation changes and then
Sure.
the issuance yesterday. So they're reverting back to the the old regulations are now the new regulations. So they're not contesting the lawsuit.
Okay.
Yes.
So I
So-
didn't hear about this. What is this
I
now?
didn't either.
Yeah, so they issued, I'll
They
find
being
it.
the
I can share
DEC?
it. The DEC, yes,
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
Yeah, so my understanding of that was that the New York State DEC issued these updates to the wetland regulations without completing their seeker review. And so there was a challenge for that, and ultimately the DEC is deciding not to challenge the challenger, yes. And so they will be reverting to the old regulations. So again, this is, we'll have to wait on further discussions with the DEC, but I think we should just wait on that, because it's not clear what if we are reverting to it, are we reverting back to the standards and the mapping, or is the mapping, so we'd have to figure that out, because if it is reverting back to the old standards, then the informational wetland boundary would no longer apply, and only the previously mapped wetland areas, their 100-foot buffer and the 500-foot buffer would apply. And there were no previously mapped wetlands on this property.
Well, so that would mean essentially that the language of the resolution would still be appropriate if it's stating that they may move forward as long as the DEC does not essentially change their delineation. Wouldn't it?
I'd have to go back.
Because that's the only thing that would negatively impact their approval.
Did they have a positive JD?
They had a positive parcel JD.
Okay.
Yes.
And they were in the process of getting a project JD.
But I'm saying, based on their current delineation that they submitted, that doesn't affect where they're, it's not, where they're building the property or grading and doing the work doesn't affect that delineated wetland.
It's
So
outside the buffer, yeah.
So even if the DEC reverts to previous mapping, it still wouldn't negatively affect this project.
But
I'm not saying that, I'm just wondering if, because right now we're not issuing a building permit, we're not, permitting any site work on this until the
Just the
DEC
plan to
verifies the
proceed.
wetland delineation.
Okay. Right,
Now,
I know what you're saying.
getting back to Ari, how she said that the way they may not even do a verification, because are they going to be issuing JDs anymore?
So they are, so if you already have a positive JD, before April 8th, it's still you have to adhere to it, except you can now refile, basically, and ask for a different determination.
Sure, okay.
Which if it's under a certain amount of acres or whatever, they can reduce, or that can change the outcome of it.
Okay.
So,
But again, to the point of depending on how the conditional permit is issued, if it's, say, waiting for a response from DEC, and DEC is thinking, I don't ever have to respond to this, something
well, they're
will
still
have to be
going to,
resolved.
they still have a list of
They do
projects.
have-
Yeah,
okay.
they're not going to just
Okay.
turn them all away.
Okay. So how much
And I'm sure their
does,
consultant's checking on it, too.
how much does this conditional permit allow them to do?
Not much at all. I mean, I think that the only thing that they would be able to do is file the plat map for the subdivision.
realistically, that wouldn't benefit them greatly because it would cause a higher assessed value for that other portion of their land because it's a buildable lot. So it would mean higher taxes until,
Sure.
like. and
Till they can actually
normally-
use it.
Normally, people wait to file plats because of that until they're going to actually do work.
But they can't
Or
do
sell
any
it.
site disturbance.
Okay.
They can't pull building permit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll have to be something that the planning department follows up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Are there any further questions, discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, then we'll continue along to town board requests at this time, of which there are none, and clean energy community actions at this time, there are also none. So we'll move to old business and discuss the 2026 Arbor Day celebration and the wrap-up. So Matt did upload a number of pictures from the town's social media for that event into our Google Drive, so you all have access to that as well. So Matt's pulling up one of them, or some of them right now. Let's see. We want to discuss what worked well, as well as what can be improved. We started off with John Getz and Kevin Berry doing short speeches introing the event, thanking the collaborators, and talking about Tree City USA, the Arbor Day celebration, and the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. We did do this a little differently than we have in previous years, where we've previously had them actually do the proclamation at that event. We felt that was, it was first off not necessary since they go through it at a town board meeting, but also we felt it would be more, residents would be more interested and benefit from a shorter, more to the point speech. So we did change that this year. We did also use the language of 2 plants per household, just because in previous years there was some confusion of, can every person have 2 plants? Like, how do we distribute evenly, fairly? And that was a good one that we would like to stick to in the future. It was also nice to have the line snake through the tables and have the plant table next to the Penfield forward table. That allowed residents to give input while they're waiting in line for the Penfield forward plan, and that we thought was really nice and effective.
I think the only thing I would change with that is swapping the location of the 2 tables, because there's a lot of people that were coming up to the table without knowing what plants we had, and if it was just the other way around, then they would have seen the guide and been able to, could have had somebody stationed there to tell people what plants we have, tell them, what would be, or give them tips on what would be the best plant for their property based on what they told us, and then come to the table knowing what's good for them.
Yeah, it seems like the line came in and it just already naturally curved around the way that it did when we really wanted it to go the other way.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It just-
And Matt's, for the people that weren't at the event, referencing the 2 tables we had for the plant giveaway. We had one with our tablecloth and one that we were actually giving trees out at. So you can see that in the picture he's showing. He's saying we would switch those 2 tables because the one with the green tablecloth had the actual information that we wanted to share. We ran out of the 100 dogwoods within 36 minutes. That's crazy. There were people that came up later asking for dogwoods after we had ran out. There were some people that asked questions about the oaks and then were like, it's going to be too big for my property, and didn't have a place to put it on their property, so they chose not to get one. I would say if we were to do planting in pots in the future for any reason, I would not want to do oaks or larger trees. And I'd probably actually be hesitant to get larger trees for this giveaway, just because I think it limits more who can get them. And I think having smaller trees or shrubs or both would benefit the larger number of people.
We still gave away all of them.
Yes, we did.
And some folks even said, were there any shrubs? You know, so of course, looking for that as well. What do you think about that because we ran out of the dogwood so quickly, would we ever say one of each, or, you know, not take 2 dogwood to start with just because it was so popular? Of course, we don't know
So,
that until it
approximately
happens.
how many people come to the event, which in previous years, we've estimated 200. I'd be hesitant to only allow 1 per person, like per family, just because we may not hand out all of the trees if we get 200.
Well, I was thinking one of each.
We could do 1 of each, but again, with that, I would encourage against the larger tree.
Okay.
Just because the oak, it's a wonderful tree for pollinators, like for so many reasons, but it grows to be 80 feet tall, 45
Absolutely.
feet wide.
A lot of maintenance.
It doesn't like wet roots. It's a little less universal. So that's my input.
So we may want to consider doing like native plants as well, so it's not just trees. Some people will be more appreciative of that.
Go ahead.
So I was speaking with Jill Carter from Healthy Yards last night, and because they're doing the native plant sale on Saturday, not tomorrow, Saturday. And I asked, you know, shouldn't we think about maybe combining those 2 efforts? And she pointed out that last year was cold, very cold for a longer time period, and this year, very cold for a longer time period, and it really, they need to have kind of these smaller plants do better if they are sold later in May.
But if they're potted, you could put them indoors for a little bit, right?
Yes, so that's another item that I was hoping the committee could discuss. I don't know if everyone in the committee knows how much effort went into potting the plants ahead of time. I can tell you that I spent a fair number of hours, Matt, collecting pots and handling those types of things, spent a fair amount of time, same with Pat, and really Katie invested so much time. Like, I don't even have a number for the number of hours between planting and collecting collecting yogurt containers and watering and all of the work. So I'd like the committee to know that effort was put in, because especially from Katie and Pat, that was a huge effort that's volunteer, but also to consider for the future of if we would like to plant them again ahead of time, if that is something we'd like to do, who is willing to do that? And also consider if for any reason the 2 weeks before the event Katie was sick, it would not have gotten
Right.
done unless Matt and I did it during staff hours.
I do want to say, John
Sorry, and John, I'm sorry.
put in a couple
Yes.
hours, and boy, can he work fast.
So first off, we do really appreciate that work, but also I would like the committee to discuss
Yeah.
future options and if that's something they want to consider in the future.
It would have been a lot easier without the oaks. It would have been a lot less time.
Just the roots are so long.
Yeah, it was just so much more dirt to shovel.
Well, it sounds like there's a couple good reasons to not go with the larger tree, both in the desirability and the effort.
Yeah. Wouldn't mind helping out with plants. It's a little bit easier as well.
Yeah.
And they can be smaller.
With that, if we're going in the direction of plants, we will have to consider another option for purchasing. And another consideration with planting ahead of time is the added cost for whatever. Thankfully, we didn't have to purchase pots. All of those were recyclable, so thank you for those that contributed to that. And that's a great sustainable initiative as well.
So we just potted 30 plants today, 4-inch pot. We got the biodegradable paper, so they're about so high, 4 inches. And I had dug out coneflowers that are about this high, so it was perfect for them. And we did those 30 in half an hour as far as planting them. I had already dug them up, and I can't say that it was a horrible amount of time digging them up. But I was sad because it was raining, but then again, I was happy because I was able to dig them out. So,
And to be clear, I mean, I personally thoroughly enjoyed planting the trees. That was a great time. So I'm not saying it's bad inherently, just to be clear.
right now, I'm talking relative to small plants, you know, and
You can just make it a potting party.
it was, you know, really had a rhythm, you know, rhythm going of who was doing, it was two of us that did that. But, and less soil was needed.
Sure.
And,
Is this required for Arbor Day? Is that like that they're trees?
So having an event celebrating trees is what's required for Arbor Day. So that's
we could do
not required to be a tree giveaway. The
Okay.
tree giveaway does benefit the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, but a plant giveaway also would.
So we could celebrate planting a few trees on town property
Sure.
and give away something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an option.
Yeah.
The other part of that is the consideration of if the timing of giving these away and then being planted is a concern because of the weather, as it continues to be every year, is do we pair this event with the EV car show? And if we do, what are we hoping to give away if we're giving something away? Or if we don't, do we do an Arbor Day celebration itself? Maybe have it combined with the plant sale if we want to combine it with something, and do it at a different time of the year where it's warmer and the trees are more likely to survive, or the plants are more likely to survive, or something like that. Now, that isn't something I've discussed with the EV car show people yet, because I do think that needs to be something that we sort out in this group. But realistically, we're happy to talk about it with them as well, but we have to figure out what this group's looking to do and what's best for whatever we're giving away.
When's the car show?
Normally, it's in April and September, based on the national,
Drive electric.
yeah.
I think just knowing what the weather's been the last couple of years, that doing it later would be more beneficial, you know, especially when you're talking about planting the plants. You know, I mean, we had frost, last week? You know?
I mean, I
And,
haven't planted
you know,
my tree yet.
you are limiting the success of, especially if we're going to go with smaller plants, you're limiting the success of them actually taking hold, right?
Yeah, well, trees like to be planted in the spring regardless of frost. So if you do trees, it's the right time. It just always sucks 'cause it's cold. If you do plants, it should be a little bit later.
Could you shift it a month? Could you do it in May instead of April, or does
So
it have to
we
be?
thankfully were able to do it with the car show in May, on May 2nd. The Greater Rochester Clean Cities and Color Penfield Green submitted a request to electric car, no, what is it? I'm sorry, tell me again.
Drive electric month?
Drive Electric Month, the group that runs that, and made that request to do it later. So that is an option if we're pairing with them. Another option, if we're not pairing with them for a tree giveaway Arbor Day celebration event, is to have an EECC table at that event, and maybe have that be more focused on energy, because it's energy and environmental conservation, and then have an Arbor Day event be more focused on environmental conservation, and kind of go both ways. And maybe that would be an opportunity for us to share more information of a bigger, larger variety. Now, that's two different events that we would hope to have members participate in. But based on previous, volunteers, I think that's been reasonable, or that would be reasonable.
Do you guys feel that the attendance at the Arbor Day celebration is driven by the giveaway of the trees as opposed to converting it? You know, like that's
Oh, do you mean
drawing the crowd as opposed, like if we were to shift it and just do plantings around, you know, the Penfield public spaces, do you think you'll still get as much turnout, and therefore would it affect the education you're trying to present to the public because people, if they're used to getting the trees and that's what drives their attendance, and then you start not doing that, are you going to reduce the amount of people that show up and therefore reduce the education that the event's supposed to provide?
These events have been separate before, and
No.
they've been successful when they've been separate.
Well,
So
I
there
think
was,
Matt, I think he's asking a different question.
I'm talking about like the suggestion of not giving out trees and planting them and just giving out plants. I mean, when we were talking about that aspect, I was wondering if,
but ultimately, we're wondering if the plant giveaway is the main drive to bring people to the Arbor Day celebration,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And being an Arbor Day celebration, that's also an EV car show, with the understanding that that's what it was this year. And I think that if that's the concern of like people only go to this event when there's trees being given away, I don't think that's the case, because we've had EV car shows that have been standalone events that people went to.
okay.
And as far as, whether we did a standalone event a standalone Arbor Day event, like I guess that hasn't been done before, where it was just a, event where we talked about trees that we have planted somewhere in town with no tree giveaway. I don't think that's been done. But we have had an event at Rothfuss Park. There was an event where there was a giveaway and planting at Rothfuss Park. There was no EV car show tied to it, and there was a good turnout for that.
Yeah, there was, I remember Color Penfield Green was there, and another group as well. Yeah, that was fantastic. But I think, as I said, what I heard were people wanting the dogwood, people looking for shrubs. Were there any other plants that were being given away? And then we referred them to Color Penfield Green for seeds.
Right, and yeah, I wanted to bring up that table actually, because that was hopping. They were giving away lots of different kinds of seeds, and I'd like to, and we talked about this last night as well, just making that bigger and tying it to the Penfield Pollinator Pathway a little bit stronger, more branding, maybe even some mini workshops about designing a garden at your home and thinking about your inventory of plants, because you might already have half the plants you already need for, anyway, we just thought that could be bigger, and pretty much anybody who was in line to get trees was also interested in that table, so, yeah.
That's my thought when considering these, is that it seems like we have a lot of bandwidth for both Arbor Day celebration and EV car show. So the idea of having the Arbor Day celebration, plant giveaway, pollinator pathway, all of these, environmental topics on one day when the plants are, they come straight from, we don't have to pot them at all. We do them how we do that event how we did it in the past. We have a workshop, maybe we invite, Bruce Zaretsky, the landscape consultant, or we have somebody there that can really focus on talking people from a professional point of view on how to take care of these in the weeks leading up to putting it in the ground. And then you have a separate event that is, the EV car show, but a sustainability fair, a lot of energy-related topics tied to it. I mean, Katie, with your experience on kind of coordinating all the tabling groups, how many would you put in the pile of, EV car shows, energy, kind of sustainability, as far as, the environmental tree planting, seed giveaway? It really, from my perspective, it seemed like there was the town and there was the Color Penfield Green, and those were the two main ones that were more, I don't know if there was like a Bricolo or someone like that, right?
No,
But
yeah,
there were multiple car dealers. There was
Right,
there
but
was
those
Green
are-
Spark.
Those
More
are
energy.
the energy.
Yeah.
Right, and then if we wanted to do the Arbor Day celebration as its own standalone event, yes, you would have, maybe if it was branded solely as that, and we were trying to draw people to table to that, then you would be getting people that are more centered towards that. And then if the EV car show is solely the EV car show, you're getting people that are more centered on that event.
Two different ways to go. It seems reasonable, I think. You said there were car dealers for the EV car show. Can we invite with the nurseries in that are, doing pollinator plant, doing
Oh, yeah.
more focus on pollinator plants.
Right.
And, and what we attended at a seminar from our church at a local nursery, and they have huge amount of native pollinators, and
Yeah,
also
was
give
it-
advice on planting.
The Christmas tree recycling, Brocola was very much involved in that.
That's the one that I, meaning,
yeah.
I didn't know if I could mention it or not.
Well, I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I
they were-
would say that that's a good group that we could route to, and, other, we could reach out to Sunscape for their, what am I thinking of, that they do,
CSA.
the CSA, having things like that, some
To have people from the community garden. table.
community garden, yeah. So, I mean, when I was considering this, it just seems like we have two opportunities to engage with the public. Right now, we're trying to sandwich it into, one Saturday that, was also competing with the Little League book sale, and then I believe the Saturday that we would have had the event was, what's the cleanup event?
Good Neighbor Day.
Good
Dave
Neighbor Day.
Herring or-
So, if we split up the events, I realize that, there's a split of efforts, but I think that there's overlap in the people that organize both of them. I don't,
Would that kill them off as far as having to organize two separate events?
Well,
Well,
may I make a quick suggestion?
Sure.
Because having gone, I feel really bad for the EV folks, because they're truly enthusiasts. I enjoyed walking. There weren't many of us walking these last 2 years, because last year, if people remember, it was like it is tonight, which is miserable. And even this last one, it was sunny, but it was chilly, and people didn't really have a chance. And I kind of felt bad for these people who were out there wanting to show their vehicles and their items. My suggestion would be maybe just reach out to them and ask them what they think, too.
Yeah.
Because I agree with what everybody's saying. There's always pros and cons, but if they think, yeah, it might be more fun to have an energy-style one in July, and I'm just using
Well, so there's two things with that. So yes, we're talking about doing two separate events, but the EV car show, because it's sponsored by
Drive Electric.
Drive Electric, it's required to be
in those certain
in
times.
2 specific months of the year.
Gotcha.
Right, and
In those specific months.
Those specific months, yeah.
and Arbor Day is a day in
Yes,
April.
it is a day in April. Now,
it is.
we don't have to have our celebration in April. That is not part of the Tree City USA requirements. And realistically, how many events are for Arbor Day and Earth Day in April? Consider that the county has 2 employees that go to almost all of the events, and they still have to say no because there's too many for them to participate in. So having an Arbor Day celebration further from Arbor Day may have a bigger draw because people have more bandwidth.
Yeah, you're not competing for the same crowds.
April's tough.
April's tough, but, you start looking at other months, you say, well, May, and then people are going to start going away, and, but I mean, so there's issues with months, but maybe other reasons, like being able to plant the plants sooner, would be, a reason to do it in a later time frame.
I know that the EV car show organizers have been very excited about pairing with the Arbor Day celebration because it brings in a huge crowd.
Well,
So,
and Matt and I did talk about if we were to separate the events, maybe we can still do some kind of giveaway with that. We do have funds, and realistically, if we're not planting plants like this, we're not spending as much money on soil. We do want to talk about putting out signs, and if it's worth spending the money on that, or would that money be better put toward some kind of giveaway item? One of the options that we thought was cool that we haven't fully fleshed out is maybe we do a wheel that residents get to spin, and there's different items that they can take home. And ideally not free plastic sunglasses, because that's not really
Right,
sustainable. But
like a new LED light bulb or
Yeah.
LED light bulb, some kind of educational item, stickers for kids if they want, those kinds of things, stickers, tattoos.
But some giveaway that's not tied to the plant sale.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And this time next year, will we be thinking about phase 2 of the climate action plan? Maybe?
Hopefully.
I can't remember what Tom
Will-
said the schedule was for it, but I think by the end of the year, phase 1 is ending,
Let's-
right?
to clarify, they are only working on phase 1.
Right.
So we don't have a timeline for phase 2 based on what, just because phase
We-
1 finishes. We would need to have funding and
We are
you would have to have, sorry.
We're currently considering funding for the budget for next year and grant possibilities for next year or the year after for phase 2.
So I
So we will
definitely,
not
that's a
know
very
till-
early conversation.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you really want to get to the EV car show people, and it's, to see whether they would be extremely disappointed to not partner, or if they could think of other possibilities to be generated that would get them excited about doing more.
Well, so part of the reason we're having this discussion now is, one, because of the timing of this committee, but also because if this committee is not supportive of one of the two options, it changes how we move forward. So if this committee is supportive of either option, has a preference for one of the options, we need to know that as staff so that we can go to the appropriate people and have those discussions. And Matt and I are not currently offering that we don't do anything with the EV car show.
No.
No.
We would prefer that there's a tabling effort at minimum, and ideally, as long as we can afford it, some kind of giveaway that would also draw people more toward the energy education if we're going to separate them.
Well, in my opinion, I would like the possibility of doing something more environmental, and as you said, possibly changing the date, all the different things that we were talking about that could go with that, nurseries. Also thinking about plant-based eating could be, a tabling. But I wouldn't want to do it to the detriment of the EV car show, as I said, if they were going to feel devastated that, we weren't doing it together. So that's
For
where
years.
my
I mean,
opinion is.
it's been going for a very, very, very long time, long before I was involved. And,
Well, not together for
but
years.
exactly, it's new having it
It's
with
really
the Arbor.
last, what,
Right.
3-4 years that it's been together?
So it's been done before, we could do it
I think it's
again, I
3.
think. But
Okay.
But we didn't have an Arbor Day celebration in 2023.
We've had plant giveaway for years. It wasn't always
Our
necessarily.
first year as a committee, we didn't have an Arbor Day celebration.
That's right, we did.
Yeah.
Do we-
Sorry.
I was saying, we've had
you-
plant or tree giveaway for years, not necessarily every single year, and I don't recall if we always, I think there's been times that there was maybe just one other table out there. and
I mean, I can tell you in the 10 years I've been working here, we've had 4 plant giveaways.
Right, that's what I said, it
Pre-planned.
was not every year.
But I'm saying, like, the majority of the last 10 years, we have not. And then before that, from my understanding, it had been a number of years. Because I think when Doug was running Conservation Board, or not running, but the liaison, it was twice in his term, and he was here for 4 years before me.
Right, and I think we were not getting the people picking up the trees. We would have 50 trees left, and then Parks would, take them and plant them, or maybe there'd be somebody, I remember one year, our Penfield Park, and I remember one year, somebody had some property that they were looking for a lot of trees, and they came back at the end to take a bunch. So I think it was, maybe that's why we weren't doing it every year.
Well, and I think we should check into how that was advertised as well.
That could
Because
be.
I don't think we advertise with the same methods as we do now.
Oh, I'm sure. And so, no, I'm not saying to go back to that. I think it's wonderful to do it every year. I'm not at all saying that, but I'm just saying there could have been
Yeah.
some of the reasons.
That's a good question.
I would like to take it back to the EV car show folks to see how far into May we can push the event. If we can push it 1 week, why can't we push it another couple weeks? That would free up other plant giveaways. I wouldn't mind fostering plants for longer on my deck. That's easy enough. John also offered, so we have 2. If we go with smaller plants, it's a lot easier. I wouldn't mind doing it again, especially with the company I had. It was very fun.
I mean, you really have three options. You could do nothing, no giveaway. You could change the dates on the giveaway we currently do, or we could separate. I think I like keeping it together. I think it's probably good to do, and if we can move the dates out a little bit, it's better.
Katie, were you on the call with the, this past Friday? Can you recall, like, their impressions of whether, like, to what John's impression was, but did they have the same impression of, like, they wish there was more engagement, or did they have any thoughts of, like, what they could do to increase engagement?
Well, they did think that there was kind of a drop-off in folks looking at the actual cars. And whether that was it's probably a little bit weather-related, but also there was a comment, there was book sale at the same time, and people were looking at the cars leaving the book sale, and half of them were EVs. EVs are not mysterious anymore. And
Right.
so it's just not what it was a couple years ago with like this new technology. Anyway, so I think it's just a different conversation now, but I still think it's such a great, for the folks who are thinking about it, who just want to like talk to owners, even if it's a smaller population, it's still valuable, and you've still got and I say this lovingly, the gearheads who are just so excited about the technology. And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see the like Volkswagen Bug that got rebuilt to be, it's just really fun, and the bus drivers were there to talk about their experiences. I think even if we don't get a huge population walking around, I still think it's hugely valuable to the community. So, and I think everybody on the organizing committee feels that way. And so even if we don't have a large group, it's still.
Oh, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying get rid of it. I was just
Yeah.
thinking about timing, right?
Yeah.
Because the warmer it is, the
Yeah.
longer people stay.
But we did think that, and I think this was Andrew Erkvitz's idea, to shorten the vendor time from 12 to 2, or whatever, 2 hours instead of 4 hours, and then let the EV folks hang out as long as they want to. Maybe keep that like 3 to 4 hours, but just kind of tighten up the event, the tabling events a little bit. Because that's kind of what happened. I mean, the Arbor Day folks, you guys, we brought a big, huge crowd in. They were there for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then it was really quiet after that.
So done.
So we could just roll with that. I think that was a great idea. So that's one reflection. We would like to rebrand so that it's not EV Car Show versus Arbor Day celebration, but something more like Spring Eco Fest, something else. And then that could all be advertised on one sign. And we thought maybe a ticket system for the folks picking up trees, because we want people free to go roam around the tables. They still stayed in line so that they could, get their trees. So those were the big takeaways.
Do you think getting the trees prevented people from going to look at cars, like in any way, like
No.
as far as carrying stuff around?
No.
Or
They could have gone after.
There were people who were walking. It was just, I felt, and I guess part of it was I was feeling bad because, as you said, there are people who have really good information, but you could also see there were some people who were feeling cold.
Right.
And so it's this balance.
The fall show is always so much better, weather-wise. Sorry.
You were talking about possibly like giveaways. Is it, would it be helpful in order to generate people at the tables and at the EV car experience to, instead of having a random spin the wheel giveaway, that you do what corporations do when you go to events, where you have to hit a certain number of vendor tables, and then you come back and you're given a giveaway because you've hit a certain number.
Passport.
Oh,
Yes.
Like
Passport.
at the.
I mean, that may be a way to get more balanced flow to the areas that aren't getting it now.
And believe it or not, kids love that sort of thing, having a
Grown-ups love that sort of
passport,
thing.
right, and, go get a stamp or
Yeah.
a sticker,
Punch
for
card.
where they visited. We do that at our church. They love that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a great idea that we should flesh out a little more. I was curious, it was brought up doing like a ticketing system where people get a ticket and then can go wander it, look at tables. What would you expect the timing difference being for them to get tickets versus just standing in line for trees?
When I first
'Cause,
heard
like-
that proposal, I was like, so they stand in line for a ticket?
No, they
and
don't.
then-
They would just get a ticket. Somebody would be responsible for, oh, you want a tree? Here's the next ticket. And then,
But they all arrive at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they're all going to
Like-
stand in line to receive a ticket.
Like peop-
And then they
yeah.
would have to wait in the line when everyone's waiting for the trees.
Because people started arriving half an hour before we were
Right.
giving away the trees.
Yeah.
Like, they were coming to our table asking for them at 9:30, and we were like, oh, we're not doing this yet.
I mean, I guess
Sorry.
Like, I guess that for like this event, how it went is that we told people to wait in a certain place to, eventually we're going to open it up. And I guess in that scenario, they wouldn't be waiting. We would just have people handing out tickets and then they could roam. So
But
I guess now
realistically,
thinking about it.
we'd be starting ahead of time in that case,
Right.
which is fine. I mean, we're there.
I would worry about ticket, okay, now you've got to reserve that tree, so that better be there when that person with that ticket comes back.
Well-
There's a certain amount of complication for setting aside, these have been ticketed and reserved, they're going to come get them, these I could still give out
Right,
possibly.
because we can't even say we'll give out 200 tickets.
Right, and what if they
because
don't come,
there's-
what if they don't come back?
Right.
But it's,
So I don't know why you wouldn't come back.
Well,
True, but also like someone may want 2 trees and someone may only want 1. And so it's not a, yeah, I guess you would give
need
out
a lot
2
more
tickets for your
organization
is this like a
for,
deli ticket, where you just grab a ticket?
yeah.
Suppose, yeah.
but it would
Well,
have to
but
be, it
doesn't
would
have
also,
to be that exact thing, but.
Right, but that's, people grab a number, and that's a ticket.
then you got to call their number, to come up when it
No,
comes
I don't
due.
think you would go that route.
you
All right, well, I'm
You
I'm
would
just
then you would
throwing
have a
things
sea of
out
people
there.
waiting for their number to be called. and not
Right,
actually-
I know, I'm
Right.
just saying.
So I think it would be more that you would hand people a number of tickets. You say, do you want 1 or 2 trees?
And then-
I want 2. Then you have 2 tickets in your hand, and you can go get them and claim them. Yeah, I don't think that we're going to, because we were still handing out trees well after that first hour, right?
Yep.
So you're really only doing this ticketing system in that first hour.
Right.
So, yes, I
Yeah,
think in
keeps
that
it-
sense, after, 10, you're really just giving plants to anybody. You don't need a ticket after that time. It's really just to let people wander around.
So,
I think we would ideally want to give out a ticket for whichever tree, though. So, like, I wouldn't want to give out 2 tickets. Someone's hoping they get 2 dogwoods, but they come back and there's no dogwoods left. You know what I mean?
That seems easy
So I think we
enough.
would want to consider that, but that's,
what if we,
Well,
We're
and
doing
and you'd
tickets,
have to
that's
put
easier.
them aside, like I said, for what was ticket, I mean, it would take some organization, it's not doable, it's just, it would take some extra organization
It'd be-
to it.
much faster if it was monoculture, one species,
Yep.
dogwood, shrub, whatever. And then there's no decision, which one do I get? And then people wait and say, well, how big does this one get?
but do we really want to give out a monoculture? Like, there's negatives to that.
Right, but
If there's like a
there's
blight
not-
or something going on.
Right, but it's not like it's, we choose native, whatever, and this year, the next year we have something different.
So I don't think you have to worry about ticket numbers or anything like that. I would say it's irrelevant, because if you have 100 dogwoods, then you have 100 blue stickers. And you ask them, when they pick up their sticker, I want, and then maybe you have 20, oaks, and they're green. So you ask them as they get their ticket, okay, you get a blue and a green. Once the tickets are gone, all your trees are accounted for. And then when they come back, they bring you 1 blue and 1 green. They get 1 of this and 1 of that. It doesn't matter where
Okay.
they were in line getting these. You know that the only number you have out there is the number of plants, because that's all the tickets you bring, right? And then
Okay.
it would all just, it would automatically assign to the number of trees that we have, right?
So what I'm having a hard time understanding is what the difference is going to be between having a line for getting tickets versus having a line for getting trees.
Right. you
Yeah.
just
It
have to
goes
line the
faster.
tree.
So how
then
we
they
have
stay.
people standing at the door waiting to get in,
We would just start ticketing early.
you would have tickets handed out and then people could wander around. The only thing I would get worried about, I guess, is if you have, an EV owner, then you hand them, 2 tickets, and then they go wait in the parking lot and they come back at noon and be like, all right, I'm here for my 2 plants. And those 2 plants are gone because we started giving them away to people that didn't have tickets.
Yeah, that's what I'm would be
So-
So maybe we
concerned
would
about.
have to do the ticketing system for the entirety of the event.
Or we'd have to
Perhaps.
set a time frame to get your tree by.
But then
Or
you're gonna
once
have
you
people-
start giving it away, then you have to, you have tickets left at the table.
Right.
You have to take away one of those tickets. I think that could work.
I think that's
Yeah.
appropriate.
But as far as giving them out early, I think you had said the reason you didn't want to give the trees out early is because you had advertised a certain time for opening. Are you going to keep advertising earlier and earlier?
That's a good point.
Yep.
Because people
the
will
worry
come
is
at
that you're going to have a bunch of, it's advertised at that certain time, and if people now,
There were
That's a
people
really good
standing in the
point.
hall in line waiting for trees. There are people that came to our table waiting for trees.
Yeah, but not more than, I don't think it's going to keep growing. Would it keep growing? I don't think it'll
I
keep
agree.
growing.
No, I think in terms of the number of people arriving at one time, I think that if people are like, well, if I don't get there really early, then I'm not going to even have any chance, because they're already gone, because, I don't know, it's,
It just made me sad that those folks were stuck
I think
where they
I
were
think
for
we're
like
jumping
half an
to-
hour, and they couldn't go have really great conversations with the vendors who
Well,
were
Okay,
there.
but-
my hope was that by having the line snake through in front of the tables was that they could talk to those people at those tables, but it doesn't seem like they did that
The
why
line
did
stayed
we
on
have
one
them
side.
standing outside?
because people weren't done setting up. When people started asking for trees, the tables weren't finished being set up.
So there was no one for them to talk to, so why are we concerned about allowing them to walk around during that time when realistically they could come in once we're all ready, stand in line, get their tree, and then wander about?
There was some delay, right, in between when the tables were open and when the speeches happened.
Not very much, no.
And even then,
No,
we
it
went-
went,
We had
it was
everyone
pretty,
come in, and then we immediately did the speeches.
it was that part was very
And
quick.
that was right at 10.
I think we're jumping to a solution, there is a problem, but we're jumping to that this ticketing is the solution. There might be other solutions out there.
I just wanted to understand better. That was
Sure.
why I asked the questions.
So can we move on and
Yeah.
solve this later?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's totally fine.
Another thing I did
yeah.
want to talk about was the yard signs. Do we really feel like it's necessary? I mean, it feels like, we set them up around town and maybe it draws some people, but ultimately, from my perspective, I think it's more the social media posts, some postings around town hall or the community center would suffice. And then we could save around, I think it's like $300 we spend on these signs.
And we
Or
could still
maybe
put up
200, yeah.
A-frame signs outside the community center that
Yes.
day with printed, as long as it's not raining.
Right.
So
Those will stay fine.
We can reuse these things? Is that what we talked about?
No, you
No, we
can't
can't
because they
because
have
of
the
the
date and
dates.
time.
Oh,
Just kind of over top of it?
Yeah, when I asked you about the sign, I was only thinking about one saying, tree giveaway is here, so that at the community center, so
So
I
we can
agree
still
with
do that.
you.
That would be
I
something
agree
that-
with you about not necessarily needing them in other locations.
I mean, $300 would cover 2 6-foot trees,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a
Most
waste of
options.
resources that's not
and they're not
renewable or
Recyclable and-
yeah.
It's not sustainable.
Okay.
And if we do this every year, then people will know about it, we just,
Right.
it's a tradition, and this is what happens, so.
And we'd still be advertising in other ways.
Right.
And
We just
people
don't know
definitely
how
hear about
effective
it.
they are until we stop doing it and
Yeah.
see how the event does.
And
So I
it's
thought
not to
this
say
next
that
year-
a change can't be, go back to it if you see.
Oh, sure.
As long as we have, if we don't do the signs next year, we will need to spend the money on something else. to be clear.
Well,
That's
yes.
part of how our budget works.
Well, we don't have to spend it on something for Arbor Day
No.
necessarily. It could be
Just
something in
it
the
has to be
EC's
used.
budget. If we decided, okay, we have this much of a budget in, midsummer, and we don't know what we'd use it for the rest of the year, then we can plant more trees somewhere.
In the fall. Okay.
All right.
Then moving forward to the climate action plan, we had an internal working group meeting on Tuesday and went over some more of the data for the greenhouse gas inventory, discussed some of the preliminary analysis and some, what's the word? Case studies based on other phase 1 climate action plans in the area, as well as one out of state that's relevant. We're looking toward the end of the month to have a larger group meeting. That's the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, which includes a larger group of staff members as well as a member from the county. And that ideally will be able to go over more of the analysis. We did talk to them about, I'll pull up my note. I know it's not in this book. We did talk to them about quality control, as that was an item that came up.
Yep.
And the quality control methods are realistically, we're reviewing the data internally, then we're passing it on to them to input, and then we're going through it again in that spreadsheet. They're also looking at the data in comparison to other communities and seeing if there's like any red flags that come up, and like if we're using this much gasoline based on our fleet and similar communities using way more, like, are we missing some information? If it's way less, did we double up on some information? So they're doing it in that way where like, does anything stand out? And then they're also with the analysis, seeing if there's any kind of oddities that are coming up. And then the other question was if it was location-based, scope 2 is location-based versus market-based. The majority of it, they are doing both and analyzing it in both regards, just to give us the different, to set our goals based on what's going to be easiest and hardest with both of those analyses. And then based on electricity, they're in the process of seeing if they can do it both ways, and that's based on the data that they're going through right now. Those were the two major questions that came out of the presentation last meeting.
They're going to follow up with more information once we get further into the greenhouse gas inventory, specific for that location versus market-based emissions.
And how those apply.
Right.
Then continuing on to EPOD mapping.
Yeah, so I presented at the GIS Special Interest Group conference here in Monroe County on our environmental protection mapping efforts, and there were members of the Monroe County Department of Environmental Services there that liked the presentation, and so they reached out to request our procedures for our EPOD mappings that we put together. And they're hoping to share those procedures with smaller municipalities that don't have GIS staff to complete them. So, yeah,
That's
so that's
great.
been shared with Monroe County to have shared. And yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, we'll see what the follow-up is, because I think this is a portion of it. I mean, I think that this gives you a roadmap for how to identify where these environmentally sensitive areas are, but we also spent a year just going over and revising our EPOD code, and if a municipality doesn't have an EPOD code to begin with, trying to get that drafted and approved is a whole nother hurdle. So that'll be something to see if that's something that moves forward in other local municipalities. But yeah, just wanted to share that that was one of the follow-ups from that the conference that I went to. Yeah. Any questions on that? Or, no? Okay. Public tree donations. John had mentioned his discussions with the town attorney. We wanted to keep this on the agenda. I think that we probably need more clarification, or at least more examples of the town taking dedication of donations from the public for things like this. I guess, Roy, you were the one that initially brought up this idea, and I was just curious, how did you what was your vision for this? Would it be something that like a resident would be able to donate a tree, or is it more of a collective of people donating to some kind of fund?
I think either, but like, for
Sure.
example, the EECC, if we wanted to have a tree that we donate to the town, we get a little plaque on it or something and get our, names out there, I guess. Could we do that?
I mean,
Or pay for
strictly
it?
speaking, the EECC's funds are going towards trees, so.
Oh.
No.
He
Oh,
means
sorry.
individual members.
Sorry, so
Yeah.
individual committee members.
Individual members.
So really just, in that case, it would be kind of how John had described, of how there would be a resolution. Well, first it would be a scope of, what would be donated, what that would afford the town to purchase as far as trees. And then we would work with the Parks Department, DPW, to figure out where these trees could be planted. And then once we had a clear plan of whether the town could accept them, where they could be planted, then a resolution would be put together and put towards the town board. Am I saying that sounds?
No, I think
yeah.
that's a good
Yeah.
assessment, Matt.
Right.
And one of my, again, a suggestion might be not to make folks volunteer even more time, but if you all think it makes sense, you can come to a work session, for example, we do have there's an opportunity to have public discourse, so you could put it out there so the whole board's hearing everything. It's not telephone, so to speak, where we're just going back and forth. Say, this is what we're proposing. I'll be there. We can have some conversation about it at a work session. It's informal, and it's a nice way to just keep this thing rolling, as Matt said. And I think our town attorney didn't see any major issues. It's just making sure we do the formalities. And then how do we make sure that there's a process in place so that our community understands what needs to happen? So
Yeah.
it might make sense to have somebody from the committee, or everybody, come on in and say, this is what we're talking about, these have been the examples, so that everybody hears it. And then Peter, our town attorney, is at those sessions as well. It might be a good way to keep this rolling and get it going, because I think it's wonderful, I really do, from a personal level.
I thought if we went to a or any kind of session where we speak, that we would be speaking for ourselves as a citizen, not necessarily for the committee.
Well, you are speaking as yourself. because
Okay,
this
but you
isn't
said
the
a few of
committee.
us
And what
going.
you're talking,
Yeah.
what's being spoken about isn't the committee
No.
using committee funds
Right,
Right.
to
right.
donate a tree.
No,
It's
right.
the volunteer residents
Okay.
of this committee coming together.
You're just saying we could be the impetus for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that we would mention, oh, I'm a member of
Right,
this
any
committee.
formal resolution wouldn't
No, we
state
would
like these
just-
trees are being donated by EECC.
No,
It'd be,
exactly.
as you individuals.
When it
donating.
came to that, right.
Just because your funds are separate from city
Absolutely.
funds.
Right.
Yeah. But like, to your credit, yes, like if a community group or, you individuals were to come together and show that there is a path to this, it could be the impetus for other people to
Yep.
say like, I'd want to have this same discussion with the town board. I'd want to donate trees. How do I have that conversation?
And what's the process to get
Right.
there? Because realistically, the biggest thing that's going to have to get fleshed out is the process.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Sure.
often for that to come forward with town staff is that we need people who want this thing to happen and are looking to actually do it.
When's the next session, you said?
Next work session is Wednesday. I need to confirm, so every legislative session, there is an opportunity for the public to speak. Every one of our work sessions, we have I'll send out online, I'll get everybody confirming it, but I do believe this next work session is an opportunity for public input.
Which is,
When, this
That'd be the
coming
20th.
Yes.
What time?
We start at 6:30. And public usually is one of the first ones
Okay.
to go in. And we've had great community members come in and just speak
Sure.
informally, and it works out nicely.
I think I have something I signed up for that date, but Matt, I had something I signed up for that date already, but Matt, you, what you kind of went through is how you saw the process happening, and John saying, yeah, that sounds like it. Could you send us that before the minutes?
So before our meeting minutes?
Yeah.
Or yeah, we can kind of summarize what we believe would be the next steps. I think
Yeah.
that first one is going to be kind of going to that work session.
Right, but
or
then you
having
said
some
what a
session.
process might be. It would be, I can't even
Oh, yeah.
repeat any of what
You're
you
hoping to share
said.
that process at that meeting?
Pardon?
You're hoping someone would share that process?
No,
with
I
the town
don't know.
board
I
at
just,
that
I
meeting,
think,
or-
because you said that would be the most difficult, is just to have the thought in mind in case there were questions back or, something like that.
Well, for us, our request is, how do we donate a tree to the town?
Yes.
And then the
Yes.
town can discuss it regardless of what that process is.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Exactly. How does a community member have an
Donate.
opportunity to donate a tree to the town? That would be maybe the way to frame it. Because you don't want to, it's not just
Right. it's
community
not just-
members here, it's
No.
any community member, just so we're clear. Just
And
to-
any community group,
Right,
whatever it
exactly.
is.
Exactly.
I think I'm available.
I'm in Albany, I'm not available.
So, John, when somebody makes asks a question like that or makes a, suggest, what's likely to happen after that? I mean, is it better to keep having people coming to like a future meeting to bring it up again? Is it not necessarily so many people at one meeting bringing it up, or better to be brought up at numerous meetings?
Great question. My suggestion would be, I don't know if you need to come to every.
No, but-
But I think what we do is it at least gets this rolling on the table from the board perspective, and it's not just, as I said, me speaking to the town supervisor and
Right,
the town
okay.
attorney. It's saying there's this interest, how do we, and then you say, here's some of the proposals we've had. We then speak about it, and it gets things rolling. It's not a legislative session. Because
Okay.
a legislative session, we literally just listen. And this is, we can have a little bit more discussion, because it's just that, it's informal. It's like,
And-
how do we do this?
And then I suppose we would hear from Sarah or Matt or you as to whether there was future discussion about it.
Right, oh, yeah,
Okay.
that would be out there.
So here's what I'm thinking. How can any community member or town resident donate a tree, either pay for it or buy one and donate it to the town to plant? Also, can we put a plaque on or near the tree once it's donated?
I would say yes, except if the town board is asking my opinion as a staff member, I would encourage us against anyone donating a physical tree. Just because the timing of planting and the health of the tree and where the tree comes from, like, we don't know those things.
And the type of
like,
tree.
immediately.
Right,
We
is
don't know
it
how long the
native?
tree's been sitting in your backyard.
Right.
Like that
but
kind of
That could be
thing.
part of the process, though, where the tree has to be purchased the day before from a nursery, and it has to be 3-inch diameter and, whatever size. It could be a thing that you say, yes, you can do it, but it has to be these criteria.
I would still encourage the town board against that, truthfully.
Yeah, I think the town needs to answer. The town board
That's fine, yeah.
needs to answer that question, is what I think. Okay.
Okay. I think that's great discussion, and we know what the follow-up is, so that's at least the initial follow-up. So with that, I'll continue us into the new business section and start with upcoming events. We'll start with the oil and stone resurfacing in mid-May. We're including this as it impacts both vehicle and active transportation in the town. And Matt has pulled up the news post on the town website that refers to this. It has a list of the town roads that are scheduled for surface treatment this year. And it details that they'll be starting on the cul-de-sacs rather than the main portions of the road. And that's because they're doing skim coating on the cul-de-sacs, I believe. Yeah. Or micro paving rather than oil and stone for the cul-de-sacs.
What's a micro paving?
Do you know what skim coating is?
Yes.
It's similar.
It's like when they do the
It's-
driveway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, so
No?
it's not when
Like a
you,
sealant?
it's not when you just like spray it like you do the driveway. It's
It's like a
it's
thinner
basically-
layer
It's a
of...
thinner layer of
Okay.
asphalt,
Okay. Okay.
whereas like a driveway, normally they're spraying it. It's not like actually asphalt.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Then continuing on for companion planting, there's a companion planting class, May 19th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's a virtual class hosted by Cornell Cooperative Extension. It's for adults. You can come learn about different types of plants that, if they grow together or in close proximity, can provide beneficial improvement on the growth of each other. So it's a really great class.
And this was just one that was promoted by the Penfield Library in their calendar, so that's why I wanted to include it. Could be beneficial for those interested in the pollinator pathway or native landscaping in general. But yeah, if you find yourself, attending this and then want to go over to the community center and pick up an application for the pollinator pathway, you can also get applications for pollinator pathway on the town's website. But yes, just another class that kind of lends itself to learning more about native plants in our area.
Great.
I'll go into the next one, green home upgrade, sorry. Not greenhouse gas, boy, that would be terrible. Sorry. Green home upgrades, can they pay for themselves now? This is June 18th, 7 to 8 p.m. at the Penfield Community Center. Katie, would you want to speak on this class?
Sure, yeah. We know that a couple years ago, we had some pretty incredible federal tax incentives to help electrify homes and cars, and those are gone. But we've run the numbers, and Al Hibner has developed this class and has developed calculators that show that that these upgrades can still pay for themselves, that not only are they better for the environment, but you will actually, generally speaking, have a return on investment. And so he kind of makes the case for these upgrades.
What's the date?
This one is June 18th, 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay. What does it say, 127?
So we ran it in January.
Oh, this is just an old, okay.
Yeah, it actually is, I think, only an hour. So the June
Okay.
class
Yeah, it's 7 to
is-
8 p.m.
Yeah.
June 18th.
Yeah.
Okay, I might have to sign
And
up.
Hannah
that's at
talked
the-
through the development of his calculators in January, and we decided that the audience doesn't necessarily need to know that. So.
And this is in person, virtual?
It could be hybrid. I'm sure Al's very good at setting up a Zoom meeting. So if you want to register but can't join, then let us know and we can
Okay,
get you the link.
thank you.
And then the last event on our list is the Home Improvement Resource Workshop. That is June 27th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. at the Community Center. And Katie, do you want to go into more detail on that too?
Yes. So there's often a lot that needs to be done on a house before you can electrify, before you can make these green upgrades. And so there are some incredible resources in our community, the county, that can help pay for a lot of home improvements. So we're working with the town. Color Penfield Green is working with the town of Penfield to offer monthly workshops this summer. If you can't make the June, the same content will be July and then August. And you can learn how what the resources are to help you pay for major systems, structural, weatherization, accessibility accommodations. And so we'll kind of lay out how people could take on those home improvement projects.
And Katie, is it accurate that you'll, as part of this class, share some information about the Monroe County Home Improvement Program,
Yeah.
which is a grant program, as well as be giving out free energy savings kits?
Yes, yes. People will go home with free energy savings kits from NYSERDA.
That's great.
Thank you for that, Sarah.
So those are our upcoming events at this time. Does anyone have any additional new business that they would like to speak on? And we do, so we'll start with anyone else's.
There's a cloth diapering class happening at the community center on June 6th, hosted by Sarah from Color Penfield Green, and can help. She's done this with a number of children now and knows all the tips and tricks, and it's a great class.
That's great.
Cool.
Okay.
We were notified of this survey that's up right now for the public to contribute to. Rachel Scooter?
I always say her name wrong. I'm sorry.
She's actually the one that came to present it on Climate Smart Communities with Rob Richardson.
She's our region's Climate Smart Community Coordinator.
Yes. And so they are soliciting feedback on this Genesee Finger Lakes Climate Action Plan survey. There's a link that I'll provide to the rest of the community afterwards, but
Great.
we can have it in the minutes as well. I guess I don't know how long the survey will be open for, but yes, you're just looking for the public to provide feedback on this survey on kind of regional climate action. Not specific to Penfield, but to the Genesee Finger Lakes area.
Is this is open to the public?
It is.
Yeah, it
yes.
just came out this week.
Yes.
What's going on?
So we'll send out the link for that. Please, both as EECC members and community members, take some time to complete that, as it will benefit our community as a whole. And then Matt is on the screen pulling up the shorter version of the link, which is https://in/in/grnyfuep.
I think that's an L.
Yeah, I think that's an LNK.
Like LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a,
wow.
it is a LinkedIn
It
link,
is.
yeah.
Oh, it's capital I.
No.
Okay, well, we'll share the link.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
please feel free to take it from the screenshot.
Yeah.
Unless there's any other new business, that's our last item.
Great.
Okay, seeing none, then we will adjourn at 5:51 PM.